Okay, so today we're presenting on C aggression, do aggression. I'm Jameson Cosgrove.
I'm Madeline Hiley.
I'm Cassidy Mischke.
So this study was conducted by Albert Bandura. He was born in 1925 in Alberta, Canada. He studied psychology at the University of British Columbia. Psychology started off as a filler class for his intended major of bio, but he eventually decided to become a psychologist. He did his graduate study at the University of Iowa and ended up working at Stanford University where he conducted this study. He is also very famous for this study. So intro, the question that Bandura asked was, do children learn aggressive behavior by observing models? And so for class connections, we looked at how aggressive behaviors change from the ages of 2 to 8, and some are more physical when young. And another thing was aggression could inhibit the behavior of social skills. And also how parents help genders develop through observation. The prediction was children who observed aggressive behavior would imitate that behavior. And importance of this study was the social learning theory and the methodology of this study. So why do you guys care about this study is because the results that they got show that you should be a good role model by demonstrating behavior that is appropriate and acceptable when around children. Also, to limit the amount of aggressive behavior you show in front of yours or other people's children so they don't imitate that behavior. And also to keep things that promote violence and aggression away from children. So the design of the study, the experimental design was a matched pairs design, randomized, and each condition has similar characteristics. Independent variables, whether the child was exposed to an aggressive acting adult or a passive adult, the gender of the model, as well as the behavior of the model that they were exposed to. Dependent variables were the imitation of physical aggression, imitative verbal aggression, and imitative non-aggressive verbal responses.
So the method, there were 72 children altogether that were aged 3 years to 6 years. I think the average age was 4 years old. And they were split into 9 groups. That was mostly so boys could have both a male and a female model to see how that compared. Then there was a control group of 24. So this is how the procedure started off for both the aggressive and non-aggressive conditions. So the child was brought to a playroom and seated at a table, which had interesting activities such as stickers and potato prints, while the adult model sat at a separate table in a different corner that had ticker toys and a mallet and a Bobo doll. That's what a Bobo doll looks like, because I didn't know. So from there, with the aggressive condition, after a minute of assembling tinker toys, the model attacked the Bobo doll with violence, such as like hitting it with the mallet that was there, kicking it, and being verbally abusive, I guess. And we have a video. How do you get to it? Down here?
Yeah, middle one. Yeah, perfect.
Of the doll with the mallet, flung it in the air, kicked it repeatedly, threw it down and beat it.
How do I get out of this? Can I just go like that? Oh. So then after the 10 minutes were up, the experimenter dismissed the adult model and took the child to a different room. So then, backing up, the non-aggressive condition, once the kid was in the room, the model played in the opposite corner and played with the Tinker toys and completely ignored the Bobo doll and then left. So then, once the 10-minute play period in the first room was up, they went to a different room, and each of these kids went individually, so it wasn't in a group. They went to this different room, and it contained attractive toys, and that was like a full dollhouse set and a jet fighter and a fire truck kind of stuff. Things like they wanted to see if they'd get a rise out of the kids, because then soon after they started playing with the toys, they told them that they were for someone else, for other children, and were taken to a different room and were rated to see if they showed any signs of aggression there. And then the test for imitation of aggression. This new room was filled with both aggressive and non-aggressive toys, kind of like the first room, except they had access to the Bobo doll and the mallet and all that kind of stuff. So while the kids played with these toys, judges sat behind a one-way mirror and observed the children, and they pretty much marked down if they showed a sign of aggression. They marked down if they did, and they were looking for an imitation of physical aggression, verbal aggression, and then non-aggressive verbal responses. And some of these are what they saw.
It was once widely believed that seeing others vent aggression would drain the viewer's aggressive drive. As you can see, exposure to aggressive modeling is hardly cathartic. Exposure to aggressive modeling increased attraction to guns, even though it was never modeled. Guns had less appeal to children who had no exposure to the aggressive modeling. The children also picked up the novel hostile language.
So the imitation of physical aggression was pretty much the kid hitting the doll with the mallet, and the verbal aggression wasn't on the video, but yelling at it aggressively, I guess. And then the non-aggressive verbal responses were still with the kids that were acting aggressively towards it, but not being so aggressive with their word choices.
So basically, the first slide summarized all of these traditions in one. It was basically saying that if the children witnessed an aggressive model, they're going to be aggressive. But the researchers found 4 different specific predictions. So basically, it was children who observed the aggressive models would imitate the adults and behave in similar ways. Children who were exposed to non-aggressive models would be less aggressive than those exposed to the aggressive model or no model at all. It was predicted that the non-aggressive models would have an aggression inhibiting effect on them. Children who imitated the behavior of same-sex models Children would imitate the behavior of the same-sex model of them more than the opposite sex. So boys would imitate men and girls would imitate women more so. And aggression is a highly masculine type behavior in society, so boys would be more likely to imitate aggression than girls would. So from the results, they found that 3 out of the 4 predictions were supported. Children with aggressive models were indeed more aggressive. Girls with male models were actually more physical. Girls with female models were more verbal, and boys were, in general, more physically aggressive. So the one prediction that wasn't supported stated that the non-aggressive model group would be less aggressive than the control group. In the experiment, the control group was the least aggressive, and the researchers did not have a reasoning behind why it was so inconclusive. So for the study conducted there was later criticisms on it. So it was children acted more aggressively towards a doll, and it wasn't a person. So they figured that the children knew the difference between a real person and a doll, so they'd be more likely to act aggressively towards a toy, a doll, which wouldn't have that big of an impact. All his subjects were from the same nursery, so there wasn't a variety of schools. They were all from the Sanford nursery. The model and the children were strangers, so this doesn't accurately demonstrate how they would imitate behaviors from familiar models like friends, parents, other family members, more familiar models. And then this was conducted in a lab setting, so you couldn't really get the ecological feel for if it were in a more natural setting like a school setting or any other settings along those lines. There was later research that expanded. Actually, Albert Bandura and conducted research 2 years later using the similar experiment to examine the power of aggressive models who were on film, who were not real people, versus the live model. This experiment demonstrated the live model still had a stronger influence. It also demonstrated that in all three models, the film models, cartoon models, and live models, the children who observed the aggressive behavior were still more likely to reproduce those behavior over children who did not. He then conducted more research further, which he analyzed modeling the aggressive behavior, but using reinforcement and punishment to see if that would impact how the children modeled those behaviors. So he found in a later study that under certain conditions, the effect of modeled violence could be altered using reinforcement and punishment. He found that children imitated violence more when they were rewarded for the behavior than when they were punished. And then in a later study done by Huseman in 2003, he analyzed the effects of violent media on children. He found that children that were exposed to violence throughout the media had a more predicted aggressive adult behavior for both females and males. So why was this a landmark study? Well, currently there are many debates involving exposing children to violent video games or TV shows. People were concerned that this kind of media or really any modeling of violent behavior would affect the children's acting out or aggressiveness later on. It enforces the idea that by saying aggression can be learned through observation. This experiment can be used to compare to today's debates, and it can be considered a landmark study. People refer to Bandura's work to help assist an argument because of Bandura's solid results that he got. It also demonstrated how children learn behaviors by observing adults, and it builds a foundation for many studies to continue to study the effects on children viewing violence in person or in the media. Many social learning theorists believe that many behaviors that make up human personality are learned and acquired through viewing adults or through a modeling process. This study also helped Bandura develop the social learning theory, which is behaviors can be learned and imitated by watching others, such as your parents, family members, older siblings, friends. And then the methodology that was used in the study was used further along in other studies to study learned behaviors. And it also showed the importance of observational learning.